Our next guest up this morning is Calvin Cherry. Calvin, who you'll meet here in just a moment, has penned a fascinating book that you could consider as a prequel to Dracula. Certainly not a small undertaking. Calvin Cherry, welcome to Let's Chat. Good to see you.
Chip.
Tell me a little bit about the book. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of the book, what made you decide to write something so intense?
I would have to go back to when I was 7 years old and read Dracula in a comic book form.
Right.
It fascinated me, and as I got older, I read an abridged version in my teenage years. Then in my young adult life, I read the full unabridged version.
Right.
And it just really sparked something in me. I've always found it to be a fascinating book, and I got more interested in Bram Stoker because of it, and I always wondered what it would have been like to have been a fly on the wall while Bram Stoker was researching and writing this book, and the motivation behind it.
What is, and this, you're tackling the period pre-Dracula. Tell us a little bit about how you managed to do that.
A ton of research. I read everything I could find on Bram Stoker, and at the time there was only a couple biographies out there.
Right.
But over the years now I think there's close to half a dozen. So I read everything I could find, including Bram Stoker's notes on Dracula, his own journal, and his own reference materials that he used.
What stood out the most out of all of the Stoker stuff that he wrote about himself, his notes and things like that? What fascinated you the most?
Well, probably his relationship with his mother, because she lived during the potato famine, and Bram was unable to walk until he was like age 7.
Right.
So he spent his childhood years in bed, and his mother would tell him ghost stories. And all those ghost stories, I feel, kind of prepared him for his writing.
Some of the reviews, and these are coming from Amazon, state there will no doubt be a movie or mini-series one day. This is a must-read for fans of Stoker and the Dracula story. And finally, this is the jolt the genre has been waiting for, and for a very long time. Very smartly written with many hidden references for those keen on the subject. Many gems hidden throughout this book. How long did it take you to put it together?
It took me about 4 years to research, and then about 10 years to get a draft. I went through several different drafts.
Right.
This ended up being the third draft.
This, it's sort of talking, you know, when you're getting into something like this, and all of us are familiar with the Dracula premise, is there any big surprise here in the book?
Well,
I'm sure there are several. What's one of the big surprises?
Well, without giving too much away, probably my favorite part of the book is about 2/3 of the way through, and Bram is on a train heading home, and he speaks to someone on the train, sees a newspaper, and that scene in the book is really really captivating.
What's the time frame that this book encompasses in real years?
Right. 1890 to 1897. 1890 is when he started writing, and 97 is when it was, 1897 was when it was published.
And this book has taken obviously a good chunk of your personal life, but you got a job and a family and everything
Yes, that's
else.
true.
So it's not like you can just sit around for 8 to 10 hours a day writing.
Right. Yeah, I try to write on the weekends. I'm doing book signings, and in fact, this past Sunday I was at the Barnes & Noble in Chattanooga, and there are signed copies there.
There are signed copies there. I'm anxiously looking forward to reading this. Again, the book is called Evolution of a Vampire, and it is written by Calvin Cherry. It is available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and Books A Million. Do a Google search on it. It is easy to find, and I think you will like the read. Hang in there. We have more of Let's Chat right after this.